Welcome on to the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. My name is Brad Nadauld. We've got the coach, Lindsey Parry, with us once again today. And we are also going to be joined by a very special guest who I'll introduce in just a short while. But we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the things he's been up to recently, has won a couple of incredible races in the UK. But before we do that, Linz, are you well? Nice to touch base once again. This is episode 3 of this brand new podcast, and the feedback has been pretty cool so far.
Yeah, so having fun doing it and very much looking forward to unpacking Jim's success story with an audience. And as we were just discussing offline, one of the things that I really love about Jim's journey is that much like Mr. Miyagi wanted to turn the Karate Kid into an independent fighter, that's really what coaching is about, and it's giving people tools to help them to make the right decisions at the right time. Jim's been in our ecosystem for a really long time, and over the past 2.5 years, Jim and I have had a couple of consults, and then he's gone away from those consults and kind of made changes based on those conversations. And this year in particular, we'll get into his results shortly, and they'll speak for themselves. But we've had some very brief WhatsApp chats, and I haven't always gotten back to him as quickly as I should. And he's dropped me a voice note to give me an idea of what he's doing, and it's been spot on. And here we are to unpack the performances, and I'm looking forward to this chat to see where it takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me bring him in. We head to Edinburgh now. So I'm sitting in Cape Town as we speak. Lindsey's sitting in Johannesburg in South Africa. And in Edinburgh in Scotland is Jim Panton. Jim, nice to catch up once again. And I'm not going to steal any of your thunder because you've had, over the last number of weeks, you have had some incredible performances. Tell us a little bit about what you've been able to achieve over the last few weeks.
Brad, Lindsey, wow, thank you very much for having me on. I'm absolutely flattered to be on this. And after that intro, I'm thinking I'm going to have to quit that right now. I'm just going to retire. That's got to be the pinnacle to get an intro like that from Lindsey. I've had a great year. And as Lindsey said, I've been working with you guys since about 2018. And I've learned a heck of a lot along the way and been growing and doing different things. And this year I've had an unexpected, really. I didn't really think I would get to winning 4 national titles and 5th in the European champs. Previous to this, I was, and this is across the aquathlon, swim run, and then sprint triathlon at the sprint distance, which I've really kind of zoned in on in the last couple of years. Previous to this, best place in Europe was 7th, and I've changed age group and things keep tweaking there. So getting a 5th was a massive, unexpected positive. And then I really zoned in on the Scottish and the British national championships for aquathlon and sprint triathlon, and ended up winning all 4 of those in my age group this year, which previously I had a bronze and a silver. That was about it. So getting 4 goals was a real shock.
Yeah, what a great season. You must be chuffed.
Oh, delighted. And particularly the last one. It was a week ago, and it was the British sprint tri champs. And it's probably the one where I thought if I get onto the podium, that would be amazing. I had the 3 wins by that point, and I just didn't think that was going to happen in the British sprint tri. The competition was going to be so much more challenging, and it was an amazing race, draft legal race, and it all came together on the day, and I was absolutely beyond myself with delight afterwards.
I love that. Jim, before we dig into sort of like some of the changes you've made and what's happening now, let's take a step back. Have you always been an athlete? I mean, growing up, were you always a runner? Did you? I mean, tell me about your athletic endeavors as a kid.
I'm having a flashback to a line that Lindsey said to me probably about 6 years ago, which plays into that question. And so the short answer is I did a fair bit of athletics at school. I was lucky enough to having grown up in South Africa, I was lucky enough to go to Coach College, which I'm sure many of your South African listeners will know, particularly Comrades runners who run past Coach College. So I was into my athletics there. I didn't do. I was quite good, but I wasn't kind of national level or anything crazy. I once ran for the Pietermaritzburg and district cross-country B team, and the Natal Schools Champs, as it was called then, and KwaZulu-Natal Champs. And I was at a party all night the night before because I was 17 and I hadn't really been to many parties. And I had to pull out of the race in the second lap because I was so far behind everyone. So that was my soiree in athletics into anything more than school athletics. And then I moved to the UK with my family in 1986. And joined the British Army eventually. And really, that was a crazy, wild, adventurous time, going to lots of different places, keeping fit, but not really doing sport or not running, certainly not doing triathlon. I hadn't ridden a bike or swum for a number of years when I started again recently. And but I kept fit in the army, so it wasn't completely inactive. Then there's a Comrades story, which we might get into, where I fell back into eventually getting back to the UK to do the lifetime ambition of running Comrades in my late 20s. And then there was a big gap because I had young kids and really didn't do anything until my late 40s. And then tried to go again to Comrades, discovered you guys, and then there's been this massive journey since 2018 of fun and adventure between Comrades and triathlons.
Jim, I know Lindsey's itching to ask you a question, but I actually am going to ask about that Comrade story because it's actually a very, very cool Comrade story. And I don't know if Lindsey knows this, but there's a connection between you and 9-time winner Bruce Fordyce. Mm-hmm. And you've run, I don't want to call it Comrades because it wasn't actually the Comrades, but it was a Comrades the distance in the weirdest of places. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was desperate to do Comrades at some point, having stood on the side of the road at Kersney watching the runners come past year after year. Bruce Fordyce was winning. I remember 4 or 5, and then the headline was 6 dice and all the rest of that. And it was fantastic to see that happening right in front of us as a schoolboy. Fast forward then 15 years, I'm with the British Army. I'm based in Bosnia on an operational tour where things were tense, but it wasn't particularly challenging from an operational point of view. And I came up with the idea to replicate, having not run Comrades, but wanting to. I came up with the idea to do a replica of the Comrades in Bosnia, get a few guys to run with me. We'd raise some money for some local schools there. And along the way, we needed some publicity. So I reached out before internet, by telephone call and letter to Bruce Fordyce and to Steve Cram in the UK. And just thinking they would give us an acknowledgement or the equivalent of a shout out in a press article or something. And part of the getting that was to ask them if they would actually come to Bosnia and do the event with us, and couldn't believe it when both of them said they would do it. So we ended up running a replica of the Comrades, 54 miles, finishing in the Olympic Stadium in Sarajevo in 1998. And we had Bruce Fordyce and Steve Cram all the way for company, which was just an unbelievable pinch me moment to be meeting Bruce Fordyce for the first time, but also Steve Cram, and then running with them. And Steve obviously isn't an ultra runner. He was only going to run a few kilometers, maybe 10, and then do the media stuff around the sides. And afterwards, he'd run the whole thing, never stopped. And when he was asked why he did it, he said, I looked around and I'm a runner and none of these guys are, and I just couldn't stop. So unexpectedly, he ran 54 miles.
I love that. I don't know if it was you who told me or it was Bruce Fordyce, but at some stage, he needed to take a leak in this run. And you were like, you can't step off the road because the landmines. You're going to have to stand in the road and take a leak. That's pretty much how it went down.
That's one of Bruce's favorite stories. I'm standing on a curb on the kind of concrete, but not stepping onto the grass or anything. Needing to go to the toilet there, kind of shouting about mines. Watch out for the mines, because obviously it was a war zone. Mines are terrible, awful plights of post-war areas, and yeah, we were just very used to not going off any hard surfaces. But Bruce thought that was quite something. That suddenly he was there running a Comrades copy. In a war zone where mines was an issue.
It's incredible. But you did manage to make it back to South Africa and run the real deal. Tell us about your Comrades experience.
Yeah, so 98 was the Comrades was the Bosnia run. And then on that trip, Bruce said, you guys have got to come and do the real run, because the story was out that I'd always wanted to do it, and that's what had driven this particular event. So he was inviting Steve Cram as well. So we talked about it offline, and in 1999, a year later, half of us that had done it, about 6 or 7, went to South Africa for all of our first Comrades and my first Comrades as well. So it was the 99 down run. And again, Bruce wasn't running that year. He was in the commentary, but I ran my first Comrades with Steve Cram. I mean, that's just nuts. And one of the fun stories of that was we both found the journey down the road to Durban challenging, like anyone in their first Comrades. Steve in particular actually injured himself about 2/3 of the way through. Did something to the back of his knee, pretty serious injury, but he kept going. And we got to about 1,500 meters to go, and we were just walking our last walk break before running in. And I challenged him to a 1,500 meter race from there to the end of the race. And I'm not quite sure who on the line, but it was pretty close.
I wonder if we had to ask him who won that, who you would say won. Jim, my money's on him.
There's a very awkward picture of the two of us crossing the line where I'm actually trying to hug him and he's actually trying to get away from me. So I think the photo finish is going to be complicated.
That is too funny. Let's take a sort of step back just a couple of years now. You're obviously in your 50s. What's been going on in your running? What sort of brought you to us?
Yeah, so it's a continuation of that. So we did 99 down run. Then there was the back-to-back, so I had to go back in 2000. The strain on the family was pretty intense. By this point, I had 2 kids under 4 years old. I'm telling my wife I've got to do a back-to-back because that's the thing you've got to do, and I got to do it in South Africa when we lived in Scotland. So I wasn't particularly popular with all the training I was doing, but I just felt I had to get through it. So we did it, got the 2000 run, and one of the kickbacks from that was that was the first year that they introduced the Bill Rowan medal in 2000 for the up run. And I thought, well, I've done one. I was at 9:49 the first year down run with Steve. Now there's a Bill Rowan medal. I'm just wanting to get the up run, and that's it, done for a while. And I thought, why not? There's a 9-hour medal up for grabs. I'm going to go for that. So, and my mother had motor neuron disease at the time. She had traveled back from the UK to South Africa to visit family, which turned out to be for the last time. She came along in a wheelchair to the race, and I became determined to get a Bill Rowan medal and to give that to my mother at the end. But and another fun bit was Bruce was trying to get the Bill Rowan as well. He wanted the new medal. So Bruce fought us Sunday on the road, and he runs up to me, and there's a big crowd around him, and he recognizes me, and he tells me to join in with him because he's going to run just under Bill Rowan. So I do probably half the race with Bruce and all his friends. And then I just blew up, absolutely blew up. Could barely walk. Got to poly shorts. Didn't think I was actually going to be able to walk up it. And I did 10:15 in the end. So I was quite disappointed about not getting the Bill Rowan, but I finished. I had the back-to-back. That was all good. My mother passed away 6 months later. I spent 20 years not doing any athletics because my kids were growing up. And then 2015, for the 2016 run, I decided I had to go back and get the Bill Rowan that I'd missed. So I trained on my own for that, went out for a down run and blew up. I remember exactly where it was, in Hillcrest, run about 6 hours. All the wheels came off, and I ran 9:49 again, almost the same time 3 times in a row, apart from that up run. And then I thought, right, that's it. I was going to have one shot. I was in my late 40s. If I wasn't going to do it, that was it. And then I just sat on the plane coming back thinking, I wonder if I change a whole bunch of things and really focus on it. And I discovered you guys, and I followed your plan for the next 2 years. Lindsey was helpful in one of the early calls that I was able to get with talking about speed and short distances, and all the other things that have changed my training in the last 6 years that you guys talk about a lot. And we'll probably get into that a bit. And I went out back in 2018 and smashed it. Almost easy, at 8:54, got the Bill Rowan, and I got back from that absolutely delighted, no plan beyond that. And a friend of mine said, what are you going to do now? And I said, I have no idea. He said, you want to do an Ironman next year in Frankfurt? Sure, why not? I've just done Comrades in sub-9. Let's go. And my triathlon journey started. Had to learn how to re-ride a bike, had to get back in the pool, and yeah, that's how I ended up in triathlon.
Brilliant. Well, before Lindsey, I'm sure Lindsey's got a question for you, but before he does, you and I had quite a funny experience a little bit earlier this year, actually. You came out to South Africa on a bit of a vacation with your wife, and I love showing off where we live. And you said you were going to be in Cape Town. I said, no worries. And you said, what are the chances we can go for a bike ride? And I said, I'll organize you a bicycle. Don't stress. You arrive, we'll make sure you ride. So I was so worried that I was going to forget something for you. So I ended up loaning a bicycle from a mate of mine that I cycle with, got everything together, had the bikes, like everything that you needed to make sure you were cool. Put the bikes, and I normally ride from home, so that's just a bit of a caveat to the story. So I put everything on the back of my car, put the bike you were going to use, the bike I was going to use, make sure everything was in the trunk of the car, headed out to where you were, and it's probably about a half an hour drive from where I live. And I arrive and I realize
at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm on holiday, Lindsey. At 4 o'clock in the morning, he wants to go for a bike ride.
Sorry, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I forgot about that too. And then we needed to see the sunrise, Jim. That's what it was. It was a beautiful part of Cape Town. We needed to see the sunrise. And we arrived just outside Jim's hotel and realized that I forgot my cycling shoes at home. I only had a pair of running shoes on, and I wasn't going to sit in traffic. I had seen what the traffic was like coming into the city, and that was one of the reasons why that I wanted to leave early. I was like, there's no ways I'm going back to fetch cycling shoes. So I ended up riding with my cleats and my running shoes. About 20 Ks into the ride, I phoned my wife. I was like, no, this is nonsense. Please, will you bring me my shoes? So we ended up meeting her, got my cycling shoes halfway through the ride, but it was a beautiful ride nonetheless, even though if half of it was done in running shoes with cleats, which don't really work. It was
an amazing ride.
When you wear a size 15 shoe and you got tiny little cleats. So yeah.
And now a new ambition for me is to do the two oceans because of where we cycled all around there and Chapman's Peak and all that. So yeah, it was a great ride. Thank you so much for that.
No, beautiful part of the world. But let's talk about some of the things you've changed. And I'm going to bring Lindsey in here too. Jim, obviously, once we've seen it, once you hit 50, things don't work as they always used to when it comes to training, and doing the same sorts of things you did in your 20s, 30s, 40s don't bear the same results. But what are some of the things that you've changed? If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there. You've changed the way you're training now compared to then.
I've got a list here because I thought this might come up. I think the first thing to mention there, and I almost touched on it before, was I remember Lindsey saying early on, right, okay, you're late 40s and you haven't really done a huge amount for the last 20 years. So your body isn't going to be in good shape for actually progressing and developing, and you haven't hammered yourself for the last 20, 30 years. So this could be interesting. And it absolutely was. I mean, I got faster and quicker and stronger over the next 3, 4, 5 years. I'm probably now 55, going into 56, nudging my peak for my age. And now it's about slowing down slower than all the rest. I don't think I can really get much quicker or stronger, but now it's about maintaining that and dropping off, reducing the reduction more than the next guys in the same age group. But the list of stuff that I've changed in that 6 years, and I probably the first one I'll put is I focused on an event that type that suited me more. So I went from long distance ultras running to Ironmans briefly. That wasn't a whole lot of fun. I'm glad I did it. But I then realized within the triathlon game, there's a whole variety of different distances and variations. And I remember being better at middle distance running at school and shorter distances than slightly longer. So I started to zone in on the sprint distance stuff. So that was the first thing, focusing on specific events. But then within that and all the way through, and there's just a list of things here. I won't go into each of them. If we can unpack whatever. But I think things that have contributed to the difference have been just overall time, the time in the saddle or time in the pool year on year, building up more capability there, consistency in the training. Sometimes it's a bit boring week after week, but just keeping it consistent. I mentioned focusing on the event itself or the type of event. A lot of people I see sometimes are doing ultras 1 minute and then sprint distance the next. And that's fine if that's what your objective is, to have fun doing all those things. But I wanted to get better at something. So I zoned in on the sprint stuff. Training less and recovery. I flagged that actually it's probably the most important one, the biggest one. Strength training at the right time in the program, not too much, not too little, and sometimes not at all. The nutrition bit, and then more recently some supplements. You guys did a podcast earlier this year on creatine, so I had a little experiment with that before preseason, and then stopped as guided and advised. Obviously, equipment makes some difference. So over the years, I've upgraded a bike. I've put new wheels on the bike. I've done the old carbon shoes for the sprint 5Ks. So that probably makes a difference. And I think overall experience, particularly in the race environment, when to push, when not to push. Some of the sprint tries that I do are draft legal. So how you get in a pack and cycle with people, and how you work out what to do when you're not in a pack, transitions. So that's the long list, and I don't think it's any one of those things. It's all of them together. Every single bit there makes a small difference, and then the combined effect is what you get overall.
Yeah, so I do want to jump in here, Brad, because we had a really good chat and built effectively a periodized plan for you last triathlon season that went pretty well, but nowhere near as well as this year. And I remember we had a base kind of discussion around, these are my big goals that I've got for next year. How do I go about taking care of myself now, so that we can do what we need to do when we get to that point? And I want to get into then that second call that we had, because the second call that we had, I think, is really the key to what ultimately unlocked this next jump in performance, or call it relative performance, now that you're getting older. And that was that you had a really great base, fine, but that you remarked, and the question you specifically asked was, look, I'm struggling with the following 2 or 3 things, and it was all down to fatigue. And at the time, there was also like quite a lot of work stress that was included in there. So you couldn't just be gung-ho and do what you like and spend. So really it was around this concept of recovery, and how can you adjust the training, and what are the most important sessions around getting that performance. What can you afford to leave out? And that was the discussion, is what can we leave out? And in a week, even once we've made these changes, in a week, when you're making decisions around needing to move things around, what then is your kind of hierarchy of what do I leave out? And I think that was the catalyst for where you find yourself now. And that's recovery. So yeah, I mean, talk to us a little bit around maybe that discussion, if you remember some of the details a little bit, and then now fast forward to the last 6 months, where you've actually made quite a lot of those decisions entirely on your own. I mean, you've asked a question here or there in the forum, but for the most part, you have figured out how to make these decisions for yourself. So talk us through that process. And then when it comes to recovery and prioritizing it, how do you make those decisions? And right now, kind of how does that look in your life and fitting it into your life?
Yeah, how you make those decisions. That's a good one to remember to come to at the end. To cover the whole thing in a journey, the transition from running with you guys to triathlon was interesting, because I went through the full program set, 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, ultra with you guys. I did all of those programs running only, and I got quite used to the high intensity, low intensity, the run slow to run fast, 80-20 stuff, and running forward at a push 5 times a week, but more often 4 times a week, and that was fine. I got a nice rhythm. Then you switch to triathlon. I pull up your standard triathlon programs, and it's like 7 days a week and 2 sessions a day to cover the swim, run, and running, swim, run, and swimming and cycling. Sorry, get all 3 out eventually. Plus the strength and other things on top of that. So it was a huge shock to jump to that many sessions. Of course, the recovery, if you're young in triathlon, is happening in the swimming, and they help each other out by working on different muscles, so you can do more. And I had to get into a rhythm of, all right, where's the 80-20 here? How am I doing the high intensity and the go easy to go fast bit here? which is obviously different between running at one extreme and swimming at the other. You can do most of it at high intensity in swimming. And less recovery there. So from the physical demands. Anyway, we get there over the years. We learn a lot, thanks to you guys. Lots of chats like you're talking about. But then last year, you and I, Lindsey, are talking about, I'm going for something quite specific. I'm trying to do well in European and World Champs. I'm aiming for national positions here. And you helped me really refine down. But it was still quite a lot. I looked at it and I was like, whoa, okay, there's a lot in there. But hey, that's what the coach says, so let's go for it. And I just felt eventually, I just felt fatigued. Yeah, there was some business pressures at the same time last year. I had a really big business project to get through last year. So I had a lot of stress going on in the background, but that wasn't really the main thing. The main thing was just lots of sessions and lots of work. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be grumpy on a Monday because I was just worn out. And I think what I learned over time, and it's one of those points I raised there, is the experience piece over time. I learned by chance when I would feel good. I wake up and go, oh, I don't feel like I normally do on a Monday. And then I go, oh, okay, that was an easier weekend. And I can now feel the difference between this and last Monday, where I had a heavy weekend and I was really struggling afterwards. So I talked to you about it, and the standard 6 days a week, 1 day rest on the sprint triathlon program, we agreed, let's do 2 days rest. And it was transformational. So I then introduced Monday and Fridays rest days, high intensities in the middle of the week and longer in the weekends. And it just worked for me. It may work for others, but it won't work for everybody. It just worked for me. And I found it out by trial and error. And then I learned so there was the feel. There's a bit of tech that comes into it as well. I've got one of these things here, which is an Aura ring. So I'm tracking my HRV. I'm tracking my nighttime sleeping heart rates. And I mean, I can look at that now over the last 3 years, and I can see seasonal peaks and troughs. But on a weekly basis, I could see what was happening. So sometimes I'd actually feel okay, and then I'd look at my HRV scores, and it would be like, no, not today. And I would just introduce either a rest day suddenly and delay a high intensity the next day. I'll just switch it, and I'd feel better the next day, and I'd get more out of the high intensity. So I was able to just play with that. Of course, obviously, real life, work, travel, family, you're having to switch things around when you feel okay anyway. But knowing, as you said, what to drop and when to drop it. So the decisions comes down to just knowing your own body and knowing what works, and then getting through a period where you've trained a little less than you perhaps think you should have done psychologically, and doing really well and going, actually, that worked. Doing a little less there really worked. So there's something in that. Got to stick to that.
Lindsey, if I can ask you a question here, Jim, because that's obviously worked for you, but let's talk. I mean, recovery is one of the core principles of our Faster Beyond 50 training sort of framework. Why is recovery so important for runners, particularly over 50, Lindsey?
Yeah, so look, I think Jim nailed it, that he's hit a period now where he improved for so many years, but now he's in this game of, he wants to stay competitive, and he wants his performance level to stay the same, if not improve slightly, but to stay the same, or if it must go down, he wants to fight that tooth and nail and slow that slowing down. So the principles are really all the same, is that we know that we only improve when we recover. And in the absence of recovery, we get fatigued and we get sick and we get injured. And then we can't be consistent. And that's when our performances really start to drop off. It's important to note that you can't get fitter without some fatigue. And I think that's where at the top end of the performance game, and that's where Jim is. I mean, in reality, Jim is now competing in the elite age group. So therefore, the margins become tighter than just for somebody who's targeting to break 25 minutes for the first time or 30 minutes for the first time in a 5K. So we need to drive fatigue so that we can improve the fitness through the season. But we also have to have enough recovery that it doesn't start to push you down into a hole. So he's managed to balance really nicely the way you feel and then introducing tech. And the learning was quite simply, this has become unpleasant. Yes, I've got a goal, and of course I want to do well. And to a certain extent, I will tolerate any discomfort if it gets me to my goal. But actually, ultimately, that can only last you for short term. You can't drag that out year after year. And so that's kind of the point at which Jim gets to, where he goes, well, geez, this isn't fun. I'm grumpy, not pleasant to be around. I'm not looking forward to stuff. And then fortunately, by chance, goes, hang on, why do I feel so good today and I felt so miserable last week? Have a look. Oh, I couldn't get to Friday because of X, Y, and Z. And then the weekend, let me get on a call with Lindsey. I want to make sure that I perform, but at the same time, I don't want to be lazy. And that's then really where we got to, had the discussion. And then phase 2 is, okay, well, what tech can I use? Well, the biggest problem with tech is that it's not always as accurate as we think it is. But the reality is that if we get the right tech, and you are now gold standard tech, then that is, now you can marry how I feel with good quality data, and you can make decisions. And then what I really liked in Jim's answer there is that he does use the face value stuff, but he's learned over how much time that there are certain times of year, there are patterns. So he can also use that data over time to help him plan things better and to get the best out of his training at different times of the year.
Absolutely. I think if I may add quickly to that, Lindsey, in the short term, using the tech, I don't want to give the impression from my previous answer that I'll wake up in the morning and I'll look at my HRV score and I'll just base everything on that. It's definitely not like that. It's a case of sometimes you wake up and you look at it and you go, okay, that's not good, or HRV is really, really low. But I know that because I've been hammering it for a week and I'm supposed to be. And that difference between kind of fatigue when you should have fatigue and fatigue when you shouldn't, I'm not sure I can explain it, but I actually feel I know the difference now. I know when I'm feeling kind of fatigued because I'm in a hard week, and that's what I should be. And then I'll be fine in 3 days because I'll have a recovery day or two down the line. There's a difference between that and just slogging it and actually feeling like you're going backwards and waking up and thinking, oh, I don't feel good, but I'll be okay on the run, and getting out on the run and feeling, I don't feel good at all here. I'm actually running really slow and I feel not strong at all. My heart rate's high. I just not enjoying this. I'm looking at my watch, wishing it to be over. Eventually you get to a point where like, okay, this is overtraining now. This isn't healthy fatigue. And I couldn't define the differences. But I think I can feel the difference.
Yeah, Jim, that's absolutely amazing. And I mean, that's like Lindsey said, that's one of the things that we want to be able to empower people to make those decisions on the fly and learn. And it's very much an individual thing. Like something that works for you won't necessarily work for me or for Lindsey or vice versa. So learning that is just such an incredible skill to learn. I think that is so
But I think
important.
the fundamentals are the same for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the subtleties that are different. So, I mean, I remember back in the beginning, never having heard of this run slow to run fast concept that you guys base most of what you do around, and thinking that was phenomenal. I mean, the reason I struggled in 2016's Comrades is because I did my own training program before I knew you guys, and I ran every run as hard as I could, and I was basing it on advice from. Don't want to give the wrong impression here, but I remember Bruce Fordyce saying back in 1998 when we were trying to do those crazy things in Bosnia, he was like, you got to do a short, a medium, and a long run in a week, and then you basically you make those longer. That was it. That was my whole advice. I was basically like short, medium, long runs, and each one of them is going to get longer over the duration. But I ran all of them flat out, so as hard as I could, and I'd come back. I remember one of my long training runs before the 2016 Comrades. I actually threw up in the bathroom at my house and afterwards, and lay on the floor for about an hour. Couldn't get up. And I remember thinking, that was awesome. That was a good training run. look how messed up I am. I must have done myself a world of good. So I went from that kind of thinking to you guys going, you got to run slow to run faster. And I was going, what? I don't understand that. And going out and trying it and going, oh my God, hallelujah. This is the best thing that's ever happened. Now I can enjoy my running, knowing that at the same time I'm actually doing really good things for myself. So those fundamentals, I think, are the same. The consistency, the strength training, we haven't even got into that, and the easy and hard and the recovery. Those are all the same for everybody, are they not? It's just how you tweak them to your own requirements.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Jim, while we've got you here, and we are running out of time, you've obviously had an incredible season up to now. What's next? And now that we've pinned Lindsey down, he's been super busy. You've got the floor. Any questions for Lindsey while we've got him here?
Okay, yeah, I've actually got a really interesting question there, because now that you mentioned that, and it's great to get a chance to bring it in here. I'm 2 years into this age group. This has been an amazing year. I thought last year would be my year when I was the youngest in the age group, but actually turns out to be the second youngest year, the 5. And now I've got ages 3, 4, and 5 within the age group before I go into the 60 group. And also strength. Sorry, fast all the time. Sometimes you think maybe I need to do a break. So I'm starting to think about doing Comrades again. The elusive green number is way down the line. I've got 4. Can I get 6 before I'm too old? 6 more. And I'm thinking about Comrades in 2026. So 2025, maybe I take the foot off the throttle a little bit for the high end goals, trying to win all these national titles at sprint, and blend a bit of sprint triathlon with some longer running, maybe a marathon somewhere. And my key question is, are those two completely opposite of each other, or can they help each other by running a bit longer in an attempt to build up my endurance for running, which right now I don't have? Could that end up helping my sprint distance stuff at the same time? Although I would want to transition to longer in due course.
So I think the Comrades question is slightly different because the seasons aren't separated enough.
26
so
is only Comrades. 26 only Comrades, but 25, if I'm building up the running, doing some longer runs, but also doing the sprint try, are those
so absolutely, and largely because the kind of 25, the 2024, let's call it base period, and then that post-competition 2025 period, absolutely. You can, that base period where we can then bump up the running a little bit. Look, it may lead to a little bit of improvement in running and a little bit of a loss maybe in the cycling, but they're not mutually exclusive. So there might be a little bit of tweaking, but certainly what that'll do is lay the groundwork for that kind of change coming towards the end of 2025, so that you land yourself 2026 in a really good position to then move on to the more Comrades focus. And then, look, I would still like to see quite a lot of the cross training elements from the triathlon staying all the way through to the Comrades. But yes, you will certainly lose a lot of that.
Definitely don't want to lose that, because I want to come back. I want to come back to the sprint try in a few years' time, so I don't want to lose that. And that was a better answer than I was actually hoping for, because what I've realized in recent race stats is that there was a stage 5-6 years ago where I was all running and my cycling and swimming was the issue. Now when I look at it, cycling and swimming are my stronger in the race, and I'm hanging on in the running. And the guys that, if I get ahead, I'm getting caught in the runs. So it's or they're pulling away from me in the runs. So actually concentrating on running for 2 reasons there could actually be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, Jim. It's been amazing catching up, and I'm glad you are talking about a Comrades comeback, because if you've only got one Bull Rowan and you haven't got it in both directions, you're not a real Comrades runner. So,
honestly, I've got some pretty bold ambitions, but an uphill Bull Rowan when you weigh 85 kilograms is just not for me.
Not one of them.
No. Just the finish will do. Yeah.
Jim, as always, great to catch up. We love chatting to you, and congratulations once again on everything you've achieved this season, man. You've been phenomenal, and it's been amazing to watch from the sidelines. Well done.
And thank you so much for all your help over these last 6 years, and the chance to come and chat about this has been amazing. Thank you.
Jim, you've got one more race left, if I'm not mistaken. Is it not this weekend coming?
No, so British Sprint Tri was last weekend. There's 4 weeks now to the European Sprint Tri Champs in France.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to Vichy with the age group GB team for Sprint Tri there for the European Champs.
Awesome. Good luck.
Well, best of luck for that. Yeah. We look forward to.
I'm going to have fun. I'm going to have fun there. I just want to just enjoy it now.
Brilliant. Well, Jim, excellent stuff. As always, Lindsey, I love doing these. We look forward to catching up again next week. Don't forget, if you are listening on whatever podcast player you listen to, please do leave us a review. It does help us get in front of more listeners in this age group, over 50s runners. That's who we want to chat to. So yeah, give us a thumbs up and a like as well, if you wouldn't mind. And don't forget, if you do have any questions for us, you're more than welcome to pop them by clicking on the link that is with the description of this podcast. And we do filter the video questions to the top. So we'll be doing another Q&A question or episode next week. Make sure you tune in for that. Lindsey, as always, thank you for your time as well. We look forward to catching up again soon. Cheers.